on three topics, one of which might not be as relevant because I know that there are experienced gardeners and urban farmers in this space for the most part. But I want to go over that. We wanted to have an opportunity. One of the big pieces in our platform last month was really talking about land justice and what that means, and particularly for Black and Brown and Indigenous peoples who've historically been marginalized in the land access and land debate. What does that mean? And so we're going to have some dialogue around land and land possession or land ownership, and I'll contextualize that in a minute. And then the next piece that the group had really seen is how do we work in collaboration and not in competition, particularly when we know that in this so-called community-based or nonprofit industrial complex, there is always a shrinking pie, whether we're talking about public and or private foundation dollars, limited access. How do we move in such a way that we are collaborating and partnering with each other as opposed to working against each other? How do we share resources, and how do we be like that colony of birds that there's not only, if you ever see birds flying in a colony, when they're flying in formation, there may be one bird that is the leader, but that bird, she is not always the leader. There's a point at which, whether for rest or whatever, or strength, that she has to fall back and let another bird take the lead. What does that mean for us as we work together? So let's talk about that a little bit as we go forward in this dialogue. And then finally, we always want to have some practical spaces, right? I know it's late in the spring, but we talked about starting a spring garden, and so we have a little PDF. And again, it may not be relevant to most of you because you're not beginners, but we'll just talk a little bit about that for a quick minute and share that resource if you want to share it to with other partners or folks that may not be as experienced, or people that are just trying to cut their teeth. So that's kind of where we're going to go. I know we had talked about doing it as in breakout sessions, but right now, since we're a small group, I don't think it makes sense unless we want to split it into two groups as we have that dialogue, or if you think that with the 8 or so of us that are on, there's no need to split into two groups. And I take any suggestions what folks' pleasure is.
I think we could hammer through the two questions all together.
Great. Okay, so we're going to stay together.
Let's stay together. Let's stay together.
So at this moment, I want to open this dialogue as Dr. Henderson is going to help me co-facilitate. But let me start just by making sure we all have an opportunity to introduce ourselves, because forgive my assumptions that everybody in this space knows each other. So that is my oversight. So I will start by saying good morning. I'm Michael Smith, and the director of the Center for Food, Faith, and Justice. And I'm just happy to be in this space with each of you. So At that point, I'm going to turn it over to Cahill and Ms. Corinne.
Thank you, Pastor Mike. Good morning, everyone. Can you see us here? Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Kay Hill, and this is my lovely director, Corinne Haskins. I'll just introduce our project a little bit. Yeah, just simply, we're working on a project with Berkeley High students of color, and we're trying to get a greenway and urban garden, youth-run urban garden established on previous railroad property that runs through South Berkeley. And so we're moving South Berkeley forward. And that's essentially our project. And I'm just excited to learn more about how to connect with other people as we grow in our project.
And thank you for that glowing introduction. So anyhow, glad to see everyone back again. And I am the director for the Berkeley Community Gardening Collaborative. And the project that Cahill mentioned is a project that we have going on with Environmental Science Department. And as the BCGC director, my other focus is also to support those established garden sites that we have in Berkeley, as well as be there for up and coming garden sites. So Cahill and I are working on the new community garden handbook, which is based on legislation, not legislation, but by a new municipal code in Berkeley that reflects how community and urban garden should be implemented. And so our whole focus is health, because we want everybody to have access to healthy food, and also to have a space within each community where there is a place that you can go without going all the way to a park and still step away from the curb and be in an environmentally supportive space. There are birds in the gardens, there are insects, there's food that's growing there, people commune with each other, they share knowledge with each other, and that's something that we also support.
Thank you both. Reverend Angela, you want to jump in?
Sure, happy to. That was so great to hear about your project. I'm excited for that. My name is Reverend Angela Jernigan, and I work with Pastor Mike and Deacon Jones on the Voices Against Violence program here in Berkeley. I'm also a mom of a Berkeley student, and my connection to gardening is really through Pastor Mike, and I know the healing impact that getting one's hands in the soil can have. And I've been so moved to see how he has invited, especially young men, young Black men, to really engage with the soil and with gardening. And just the healing potential of that is really exciting to me. So I'm just here to learn more and offer my support for what you all are doing. It's deeply inspiring. So thank you for letting me.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Who'd like to go next?
Well, I won't make you wait too long. I'm Morris Henderson and I'm retired.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, don't let him lie to you. Thank you, Doc. Who'd like to go next?
I
could go.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead. 'Cause
First.
I don't know what I'm gonna say. I was just trying to honor the space. Oh, I guess I do have to go. Okay, I'm Traver. I am a busybody. I think that's it. I'm interested in these continued conversations. I really, my main interest is getting to know where everyone stands in like the food justice, food sovereignty world, and like I'm really interested in seeing how like we can work together and like serve common causes. The end.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm Michael, and I work with Mike, and I could say I work with Dr. Henderson too, because we're all joined at the hip, and I work with Angela, so it's all interconnected. So, but and what I do really is I do a lot of the technical support and set up and make sure these meetings flow, and also I'm very interested in where are we going in the future with this. I see a movement towards agroecology from a bunch of different directions, and glad to be in the center of it, and just want to make sure that 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 everybody's included and nobody's left out on this movement. Hey Abby, just in time.
So we had Nashoni had a question, and the only thing we were doing so far was just introducing ourselves. So if you and Abby want to introduce yourselves in the space, and then I'll go back over the topics that we're going to be talking about.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Najoni. I'm in collaboration with Traver at the Go Track Community Farm. I work for Segurity Land Trust. Also, the American Indian Child Resource Center, all working with youth in the Bay Area, serving our communities. And today we have our elder food distribution. So I'll be listening in, but getting things ready. And yeah, nice to meet you all. Nice to see people again. And I'm glad to share ideas and to collaborate in this space.
Thank you so much. Abby, it's on you.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Abby, use she, her pronouns. I'm in AmeriCorps Vista with Interfaith Sustainable Food Collaborative. So we serve the Bay Area faith communities, supporting them and becoming hubs for food access resources. I specifically work on farm and garden projects at faith sites. Also a farmer at the Giltrack Farm with Traver and Naz, and have been working with the CFFJ team for the past several months too, just helping out planning the Earth Day Symposium and hopefully doing some backyard garden work with them going forward. So happy to be here. Good to see everybody.
Absolutely, it's great to have you all in the space. Naz had asked the question again, and I know as she and Abby have come in, so just making sure that we're clear. We're going to spend some time primarily in two areas. The first one is about land possession or land ownership. I know the team talked about land ownership, and the subset of that question is how do we own land? I added land possession because I think that we need to make some distinctions, as Dr. Henderson and I talked about, between the concept of ownership versus possession. And what does that mean, even before we get into occupation? And so, we're going to get into that dialogue. And then the second piece, which is so great because you have several organizations today that are represented, and we all have our hands in different areas. And the second question is going to be, how do we work in collaboration as opposed to competition? And then, again, all of you here are pretty much experienced gardeners. And so I know the third thing that we were going to do in this space was talk about starting a spring garden. We have a real short presentation that we can put in a PDF form if y'all want to share it with other people in your network. I don't think that that's going to be as necessary given who's on the call today. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Henderson and Traver and Abby in terms of opening this first question. Dr. Henderson, you and I, as the team, had formulated these questions which emerged out of the symposium. I want you and Traver and Abby in particular to help us frame this idea of land ownership. How do we own it, or how do we possess it? What are, you know, the ongoing challenges, and maybe some ideas and strategies?
Well, my brother, you know, I was born in Columbus, Mississippi. And I remember my grandmama telling me one day, boy, you better be careful what you ask for.
Mm.
And I know we teach our people, and it's a good economic thought. We want to have ownership of things that we can have and call our own, and pass it on to subsequent generations. But one thing I found out, and let's say even let's put it to home ownership. One thing we teach people about wanting home ownership, but we don't tell them about home maintenance. That there's something that goes along with home ownership that makes it a responsibility, not just something that you get, but also something that you have to give and put into. So when we're talking about ownership of the land, you and I had the conversation about how, yeah, we want to talk about that, but how when the people who now occupy the land first confronted the people who were in possession of the land, thought that ownership of the land was a foreign concept to them. That was not an idea that was something they could wrap their mind about, because you don't own that which does not belong to you. But we've had to adapt ourselves to the current Western mindset that says ownership is everything. It is iconic. It is the God. We own things. And owning generally gives you leadership. I'm using that word cautiously. It gives you control. It gives you power. And oftentimes that turns into greed. And right now, most of the indigenous people and people of color have traded all that they had in land for, I'm not sure what all we got for it, but we certainly did not get any power. And how we now navigate and negotiate what we do have, which is not very much in terms of land ownership. How do we turn that into a powerful voice for us in this space, that we can use our intellectual prowessness? That's all we got right now, is our minds and our spirits, that we can galvanize or bring those resources together collectively to have an impact.
Thanks, Doc. Traver and Abby, before I get everybody else in, I know you all helped to form and formulate. I just want to make sure that if there's other things that you want to help frame that haven't gotten in there, that get in there before we open it up.
I don't think so. Well, I think what we were most curious about was like to kind of blow it open even more, like take like ownership and occupation out of it, is like, how do people view their relationship to land, right? Like, which is can be like a really personal, intimate like process of discovery, right? Like, how do you relate to the earth, to the way that you walk upon it? Because that will inform like whether we even believe that we can own land, or like, can we occupy land? What does it mean to be part of it? And so like, I guess that's what I'm most curious about. Like, thank you, Dr. Henderson, for sharing your perspective, but I would really like to hear like everyone's like individual perspectives on what it means to interact with land, to be of it, to be in relationship with it, and how can we like kind of collectivize that.
Thank you, Traver. Thank you.
Thanks, Traver. Abby, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I'm down to roll with that question. For now, I have some other thoughts and some things that have come up based on the work that I'm doing with churches, but I'd like to stick with the question that Traver just asked for right now, to hear what's coming up for folks.
So y'all have heard Trevor and Abby and Dr. Henderson, and let's talk about that relationship to land, you as an individual. I'd widen that circle a little bit, you know, not to say that our communities are monolithic, but from your perspective as an individual and your observations in the context of the community that you live in or belong to, how do you see yourself? And I'll open that for anybody, please.
I really love the challenge of how to try to break from that paradigm of ownership, because it's really hard in America, because you think without ownership, like you say, you don't have any power. But then I think about what happened in LA, where these people, where the community just moved into a situation where they started planning on the garden. You showed us the video like maybe 2 years ago, Mike, where they were down in.
That's The Garden, the movie The Garden from well, at that time it was still South Central LA, but it's South LA now.
Right. What that brought up was how they saw relation to the land. All they saw was a plot that was not being used for years and years. And then they grew a massive garden on there and even divided it up like a co-op, you know, for everybody had their own little section to grow what they need and share. I was like, to me, and it felt so natural. And then one day the landlord comes back after seeing all this and says, you know, hey, I want to sell this land. You guys got to get off. You know, that's where the ownership is conflicting with people's relationship with the land. I was like, it's land. That's how we use land as human beings, is something to support us, to support our needs. We live with it, we take care of it. But all that gets lost in the paradigm of ownership. And how do we build policies to always have a space for a community, you know, to have a space like that? Because I think it's important, because when you become disconnected from the land, you kind of become disconnected from, you know, belonging. I would say that when you talk about the Native Americans, they would have probably looked at themselves as belonging to this space instead of owning it.
Thank you, bro. Any other perspectives? Anybody else want to share?
I think this is something that I struggle with all the time. And as I continue to develop a relationship with the land and connect to the land and connect to ancestral practices, there's still that thing in the back of my mind about being safe and secure and having stability. And, you know, with my immediate family always struggling to find a place and being evicted, going through different things like that, it makes sense to have home ownership. It makes sense to secure something that's stable. At the same time, it's like, this isn't the way that I would like to do it. But as Pastor Henderson was saying, this is unfortunately the Western world that we live in, and there's some balance in there. So until we can go back to a way that feels good for the time being, like, this is how it is. So coming from those two perspectives, where it's like, I don't want to do it this way, but at the same time, I have to secure something for my family.
Yeah, and
Pastor,
go ahead.
I believe she's introduced a word to us that we should not overlook, and that is equilibrium. Though I may sometimes offer what could be coarse critique of the system that we are now currently living in, it is what it is. It is where we find ourselves, and it is the environment and the ecological system, if you will, politically and economically, spiritually, and otherwise, that we're going to have to find ourselves functioning and operating in.
Yeah. And I think, you know, you're right. And what I was going to say to what Nastoni was saying is that, you know, it's that is a sobering reality, right?
It is.
That there is indeed the ideal of what we aspire to, and then there is the contextual realities of how we, have to encounter the issue of eviction, right? The issue of gentrification and displacement. And I know people don't like to talk about systematic and structural, ways that happens, but they do. And there's evidence that really shares and shows that it does. And so, yeah, I mean, that's just real. And so I really thank her for lifting that up. Other insights, other thoughts, perspectives that people have.
Yeah, I can jump in and share a little bit of my thoughts. I definitely agree with you, Nashoni, that it's like a conflict in yourself, or that's how I feel. Just knowing that like my ancestors came from like a lot of different places that aren't here. And then also to be trying to understand how much this land that I currently live on has changed, how it used to be so diverse and abundant that seabirds would just completely like flock the skies. It would be like, like a whole cloud, and that I look around and things are so different. So you can definitely get caught up in feeling like in a really negative view of it all. And on top of that, I think we all are against the idea of land ownership. But I think what comes with that, when you separate yourself from the land and you claim that you own it or are above it, can extract from it for your own personal gain, inherently you're also separating yourself from other people. And you can see that's when you get to the idea of othering, and you look at someone as not part of you, and that's really like not what we need to be doing. So at the same time, I feel like reconnecting with the land in groups and ways that we're doing, a lot of people on this call, can also help us connect with each other, which is why I'm really happy to have something like this, like an ongoing discussion where we can share our, shared values, because I think that's what we really need to get back into, connection with the land and with each other.
Wow, that's thank you. Pastor Mike, one of the things that she just brought to me is, do we understand land now? Have we allowed the 21st century, not third millennium yet, but 21st century, to divide us people-wise, socially, into urban and rural, such that land is basically defined now as either being in the city or in the country? And if I'm talking to agroecology, I'm talking about whether I'm farming in the rural or am I farming in an urban setting. And if we're talking about land possession and ownership in one situation versus the other, we're talking about having to do a different kind of mindset. How do you deal with a smaller set of land, piece of land, versus having some wide open spaces? How do people who have small plots, as you said, plan to network and cooperate and collaborate so that they can bring that power together, those little small voices together to maybe make a voice that can speak effectively and powerfully for them? Is that opportunity out here for what we're doing?
Good. And thank you, Cahill. Anybody else?
Yes, Cahill, thank you very much for that.
I have something to say.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Which is just that, so some of what I do at my work is I'm looking at churches that have these big properties, some of them are on several acres that's not being used. And to me, it just looks like this vacant space that should be a farm or should be given back or should be in use to someone besides the like 20 people who go to the church once a week. And it's so obvious to me. And it feels like in a group like this, we're all thinking about it the same way. Like, why should this just be vacant land that's just owned by this church that stole it when they were executing genocide a couple hundred years ago? Like, why do they still think that they own this land and think that, you know, just considering like the liabilities of putting in a farm or something are more important than feeding the community and feeding the ecology at large in that area, and like supporting the wider community, when it feels so clear to me and maybe to us, like what is it about having ownership and having power that disconnects people from this clear truth? And it just feels like it's really hard to work with people who see this as, you know, like losing power, losing something that they deserve and they have and it's theirs. And what does it take to change that perspective and to kind of open the hearts there into what's possible and what's actually going to be more connecting and more generative for everybody, including that small church community that's there. So that's just a question that I have been thinking about.
Yeah, that's powerful. And I'm thinking about not just what you said, but the things that Nashoni and Cahill and Dr. Henderson have added. And there's some things that I want to share about all of it. But I want to make sure that I get perspectives, because this is really good. This is really powerful. And Trevor, I thank you for making sure you push us to that edge. Anybody else have other perspectives and insights about the relationship or their relationships to land, or your community's relationship to the land that you want to share? Please. Very rich dialogue.
I feel aware in this space that of all of you, I think I have cultivated a relationship to the land the least of anyone in this space. So that's why I'm mostly just drinking in your perspectives. But I just wanted to say that I've had recurring dreams over my lifetime of trying to figure out where is home. And I'm often like flying above the land, gazing out at over all across the East Coast and then California, and trying to figure out where am I supposed to be. And this has been over decades of my life. And it's just occurring to me that this is really indicative of the relationship that I have to the land and that my people have to the land, and that we really are, our bodies are disconnected, and our bodies have a sense of belonging to the earth. And I think that's, as coming from a white family, a white Christian Protestant family, I think that's some of the legacy that I carry with me in my bones, in my flesh. And so I feel very grateful to be able to listen to what the wisdom that you're living into as a collective here. So I don't have much wisdom to share, but I'm grateful to be among you.
Rev, thank you so much. Are there other insights?
Could I add one more, Pastor, before you go into yours? The conversation has forced me to remember and remind all of us that my prayers this morning and for the last few days have been very heavy with the people of the wishful state of Palestine. And our conversation brings this to me because as I listen to everybody talk about trying to make this ceasefire happen, we can't do that because our voice carries no credibility as far as I'm concerned. Nashoni, as I see her presence in our space, I can only think about how they see that conflict. And when you have been deprived of land because it was taken from you, and so you have to navigate and negotiate your very existence, your presence, as though you are alien on your own land, in your own space. I can only, and you talk about, sometimes I feel like a motherless child or homeless. How can I don't want to imagine. I know how my experience feels having to negotiate in this space from being brought here against my will. I cannot imagine how it feels to have somebody come in your house, put a gun to your head, tell you that this is no longer your house. It's mine. And you will do as I say do. And we have to negotiate our presence out of that state of terror. And that's what we do. And that's what January 6th to me is also about. And all this comes back around to how long will it take for us to say we can't live like this any longer. There has to be a better way.
Thank you, Doc. Ms. Corinne, I know you got some wisdom for us. If you want to share something, please.
Well, you know, in Africa, the women garden. So, you know, we've all been close to the soil, right? And it's ingrained in us. And as has been mentioned, there's been a separation. People think they can take ownership. And that ownership all comes out of an economic and a political system. And the reality is, while we all know that everybody is entitled to have land, access to land, nobody should own it. You would think churches that have small numbers would go, how do we get our membership to increase? How do we extend our relationship with the community? Garden, if you garden, people are gonna come. There you get your people, you get your congregation, you get spiritual and you get physical needs met. The only solution that exists that I see happening right now, especially in California and the Bay Area, and I'm sure elsewhere, is when I refer to the Community Garden Handbook, one of the things that they suggest, if you're looking for a place to garden in your community, first you need to sit down, have a conversation with your neighbors, the church, the folks in your community, the folks in your school site, look for a piece of land, approach the owner is what the suggestion is, and try to work out a lease. I also know that the state of California has a reciprocal agreement that was sunsetting a few years ago, and it continues, so it didn't sunset. And that allowed farmers to approach large landowners. And so also people in urban areas, and that the people who are the owners get a tax relief. I cannot tell you the number of that bill right now, but it's operating right now. So it continues to operate. So on that same basis, the city of Berkeley said, approach landowners and try to go for a 5 to 10 year. And hopefully once you get out that far, you become such a strong political force that then you can negotiate and continue with the contract. But it involves bodies, it involves the village. And we have a village. We have a village, and I'll tell you how I know we got a village, because we have young people like Abby and those people out there doing Black Lives Matter, and those people out there fighting against the free-willing gun kind of concept, and all those things. Those are the benefactors of what was happening in the 60s and the 70s. We think sometimes the youth aren't listening, but they listen, and then they're willing to put their bodies out there. So it involves going with the youth, You gotta bring the youth in. We have to grow them. We have to grow this voice, because as I told the Democrats when they sent me a thing about your membership, and I sent them back, I'm an independent. I told them, my fingers hit the lever, my fingers punched the hole in that ballot. You need to hear our voices, because you don't get elected by PG&E. You get elected by those people who work, and that's who they need to hear. And what I see all the time is when a village gets loud, then they don't do something. It stops them. When Ben Bartlett said no planes flying over South Berkeley, and he got together and he got with Pastor Mike and all these people, we don't have the planes. That path is not happening. It takes us. And I know it's like preaching to the choir, but sometimes that's all we got is the choir in the village. And we just need to expand our choir. I don't have any solutions. I wish I did, but I do know that if any community wants to have a garden site, go out and corral the folks who support you, then go approach whoever that landowner is. First thing you tell them, because it's all about the money, is you get to have a tax write-off that's provided by the state. Yeah, they only hear money, and that's sad, because they are the ones, as we said, who've separated themselves from the land. I don't know how you can do that, but people do it. I really don't know how. We're getting chickens this weekend. I'm just so excited to have chickens again. And what we did, we built a coop in the backyard, and then the landlord said, well, okay. That was 15 years ago.
Ask for forgiveness, not for permission.
There you go. I didn't mean to talk so long. I apologize.
No. We need that wisdom. I want to share something, because it kind of, I'm going to try to thread together what you all have said. And I want to start here, because I think the one word that we've danced around that we have not talked about, and Dr. Henderson probably hit it as close to it. And, I think Nas, talked about it some, and Cahill, talked about it some, and, and surely Ms. Corinne just gave us this, but I think the word we have to name around land is trauma. And I think that before we talk about everything that the oppressor or the colonizer has done, right, to contribute to that, I think there's something that we have to own about trauma. When I started in 1993 at the Conservation Corps, we had a very large AmeriCorps grant to the tune of about $2.3 million a year. That's in 93. I can't get a $200,000 grant now. Okay. But they had a $2.3 million annual grant to implement this AmeriCorps program. One of the two largest programs in the country. It was right here in Oakland. And the contract that I was responsible for was the East Bay Regional Park District. If you don't know anything about the East Bay Regional Park District, the East Bay Regional Park District is the second largest regional park district in all of the United States, second only to the Florida Everglades. East Bay Regional Park District is massive. It spans 2 counties. It is a government agency that spans Alameda and Contra Costa County, and also encroaches on somewhat of state parks, because there are state parks such as Crown Beach and Alameda, and the East Bay trails that are actually California state parks, but are still operated by the East Bay Regional Park District. The East Bay Regional Park District is one of the best kept secrets, particularly for people of color, that we don't even know about. When you talk about living wage, if you're talking about jobs, you're talking about living wage jobs that benefit. The East Bay Regional Park District has long been ahead of the curve. And working, with, predominantly group of Black and brown kids, in Oakland and the East Bay, that was my first contract. And I said, man, this is a great opportunity to, help some of our kids, grow in the natural environment. They can be outdoors. They can surely learn some job skills. They can provide, some community service, and some of them might even be fortunate enough to get on with the East Bay Regional Park District, because the population that I'm working with, for the most part, these are a lot of young people that, just didn't really have a chance to get it right the first time because the system had failed them. And me thinking, wow, I'm gonna come to them with this opportunity and I'm gonna walk with them through this. And so when I started recruiting young people for my team, I had 12 slots. And AmeriCorps also has a lot of young, college educated, middle class and upper middle class. And I said, man, I'm gonna get these little brothers and sisters right here in the hood. And I'm gonna, and now again, for most of the Black kids, right, they were 3 and 4 generations at least removed from slavery or even from sharecropping. Mm-hmm. The Latinx kids, there were a couple that were first generation migrant farmers, but most of them were 1 or 2 generations removed. But when I approached them about working in open spaces and working in natural environments and living, the response that the kids who didn't really even know that, but somebody put it in their head, man, I ain't doing that. You know what? I ain't no slave. So somebody has conditioned them with that trauma or passed that trauma on. As one kid said to me, I don't work in dirt. So if that trauma is not treated, yeah. Y'all not hear what I'm saying? If that trauma is not treated, yeah. The legacies of those displacements, the legacy of that Middle Passage, Mama Corinne, the legacy, you don't think about those women farmers who the seeds of life are in their womb. You think of the trauma, the scars that have not been treated and not been healed. And we, even in our liberation efforts to live in existence with the land, we have to own that trauma, because too many of our people, and we talk about young people, but the young people didn't get it from themselves. Somebody passed it on. Somebody taught them or didn't teach them. Somebody did not affirm them or not love them in a way that made them value themselves in existence to the land and the environment. So that's one of the pieces that we're gonna have to deal with. Last year, our theme in the Environmental Summit Symposium, Dr. Henderson and I came up with this thing that we call Black, Green, and Traumatized. Yeah. Black, Green, and Traumatized. And what it was really indicating and codifying was the fact that even in the environmental movement, even in the urban gardening movement, right? That there is still trauma among the green movement that exists, particularly for Black and brown people. And there's often a mental and emotional disconnect and scarring that even the liberated environmental movement has been a contributor to.
In what way, Pastor?
In that for many people of color, they have been told that they and been shown that they should not or could not be a part of the mainstream environmental movement. In 1995, the North American Association for Environmental Education, NAFE is huge. NAFE spans, Canada, the United States, and even a portion of Central America. But they are primarily a white European organization. In 95, they were going to have their annual conference in San Francisco. And NAFE, now they're a little better now, but I'm going back 1995. NAFE had no Black or brown leadership, not even consultational leadership, let alone board members or involvement. And you know what their theme for their annual conference that year was going to be? How to work with urban youth of color. Y'all ain't hearing what I'm saying. The organization that had no Black and brown leadership was coming to San Francisco to talk about how to work with urban youth of color on urban gardening, urban farming.
That's why I have issues with pioneers. Same thing.
Exactly.
Wow.
And there was a group of folks led by Robert Bullard, who was still at Clark University at the time, one of the founders of the postmodern environmental justice movement, and a bunch of other folks, including Running Grass, who used to run the Three Circles Center over at Running Grass at the Three Circles Center over at the Presidio, Lily Mae Jones, Shyam Shabaka, and a group of folks that band together nationally. I was young, wet behind my ears. And Shyam drugged me into it and drugged me to the meeting, because for the same reason why we need to be lifting up the Cahills and the Abbeys and the Nishonis and the Travers, is that somebody took me by the hand and said, you need to get your ass up in this meeting. Yeah, I don't care that you're 25 years old. You need to get your ass up in this meeting with these elders and see what's going on, because there's something wrong about this. And in that, they began to organize a counter teach-in about Black, brown, yellow, and red folks working with youth of color in urban settings, teaching urban farming to them. And it wasn't just talking about the activities, but it was also addressing the trauma that you all are talking about this morning. Yeah. So I think that there has to be an effort. Corinne made a mistake of saying that she doesn't have any answers. Corinne, you are the answer. You are the answer.
Yeah.
And your spirit and your effort is the answer. Yeah. And so then let me go to this piece about church. Let me tell you what my confession is, Abby. When we started Food, Faith, and Justice, and I'm trying not to get emotional about this, other than Michael and a handful of other people in my church, the church that I've been pastoring for 15 years, they didn't support it. The church didn't support it. They came with the same excuses that the young people said to me when I was at the conservation court. That's dirty. Why are you doing? We tried to leave the woods. You trying to take us back. Church didn't want to have nothing to do with it. And they began to label it. That's Pastor Michael's stuff.
Yeah.
Then when I couldn't get the support of the church, I went to what was natural, because for me, professionally, I didn't start in the church. Even though I grew up in church, professionally, I didn't really have that kind of church background professionally. I came from the nonprofit community. So I went to the nonprofit community. I went to other community-based organizations. I'm not going to say their names on the phone because, and some of y'all know who they are. But when I started going to the nonprofit community, and I have been somebody who has been as loving and embracing as inclusive for people that are faith people, no faith people, semi-faith people, different faith people. It don't matter. And they were not welcome. As much as they talk about inclusivity and welcome, they weren't welcoming either. Matter of fact, they were the progressive nonprofit community was, I'm going to be honest with you, in the urban gardening and environmental, they were almost blatantly biased and racist because, you know, and I never said that I was a pastor. But you know, folks know who you are. They know who you are. And I just called, hey, this is Michael Smith. And I'm telling you, they did not want anything to do with us. You want to know the truth? Who really helped us get a start? It was the Berkeley Food Institute. I'm being real with you. It was the Berkeley Food Institute. It was Corinne Haskins, Healthy Black Families, and a couple of other people that said, man, we believe in what y'all trying to do over there. I'm just telling you the truth. And so unfortunately, you know what church folk don't want to hear me say, you know, Dr. Henderson and Reverend Angela, is that church folk don't want me to hear me say that churches is in bed with the empire.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Who came over? You know, this just
Go ahead.
really short.
Yeah.
So I always see that there are three prongs. There's the politician, there's the business community, and then there is the spiritual community who can reap rewards of either gaining more people of faith, but at the same time, because there's this interrelationship, you know, there's that money thing and that power thing, and Traver said it, that greed thing, and mine instead of ours.
Right.
And so everybody is in bed. Those are the three, you know, I don't know how we overcome that. I can see how you overcame that. First of all, it takes somebody who's committed. You got to really be committed, and you're committed because you know the situation. You know what's going on in your community. You see what's going on. You know the hardships. As Dr. Joy DeGruy said, we have our blood pressure go up the minute we walk out the door.
She's right. She's right.
Okay, and she was the first person I ever heard mention generational trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And it does get passed down. And our big struggle, as you said, is to grow our community. What it comes down to, it really is people don't understand. If I grow my food, I know what goes into my food.
Yeah.
Right.
If I want fresh food, it is better for me to go to the backyard or to the community's farmers market than to go to any of those stores that have food that's been sitting there, that has all the chemicals so it can sit on the shelf. And oh, by the way, if you're in that community, you're gonna pay more than the same people buying that same product in another community. These are the things that we got to work with. And I'm glad we're having this discussion because it takes working together.
I think
It does. Go ahead, Trevor.
Well, Ms. Corinne, you just brought up like a really good point. You said you don't know like how we fix it, but this kind of pulls me back to something that Cahill mentioned at the very beginning, which is like this connection to land. And actually I need to like look at what, hold on one second. Oh, and how like when you frame it as ownership, you separate yourself from the land. And when you're separate from the land, you ultimately end up separating yourself from other people. And if we were to lean into that, because I accept that as a truth, and if in this room we can accept that as a truth, when we as people become divided from the land, we divide ourselves from one another as well. The solution is kind of like simple. It's right there. It's like, well, you just reconnect the people with the land. But how do you do that is the big question. And it doesn't have to be big, right? Like it can happen like one single person at a time, in whatever way that they might have access to it, which is like really refreshing for me because like, and this like pulls back in what Abby had mentioned about these like almost obvious truths, like these clear truths about the way that we should be using land and the way that we should be interacting it, the way these churches. And for, like, I also want to make a difference. There's a difference between white church and black church in the way that they interact with the land. So I just want that to be really clear. But when we are able to like, how could we get like a faith leader, right? Like one of these leaders of a church, let's say like a white church in particular, to reconnect themselves with the land. This is something that Angela brought in, Reverend Angela brought in too. Like, and I'm happy that she was able to speak that truth, to like basically say like, my folks were colonizers and I feel in my body a deep disconnect from the land. That's my only relationship with it, is the absence of one, in my search for a reconnection to it. So it's like, how do we bring all of the people back? Like, first we have to name where everyone is because the disconnects are there, right? Like we know that everyone is disconnected, but everyone is disconnected for different reasons. Mm-hmm. So like to name the reason that they're disconnected and then like very specifically address that issue. Be like, you're African American, you Black, you can't connect to the land because you have like slavery trauma, right? Like you, white lady, you can't connect to the land because you know it's not yours and you're not supposed to be here. How do we fix that? And like, so it's like really beautiful, like all of these things that everyone's been able to contribute and like the way that it's like coming together into like some like really palpable, what feels like palpable solutions. Okay, thank you for listening to that.
No, that's a good segue. That's a good segue. So let's because we're gonna have to extend this dialogue, obviously, right? And the land use one is gonna be a big thing. But the second part, because we got about 20 minutes left, let's talk about ways that we can be in collaboration as opposed to competition. And I'm gonna put this out there. Dr. Henderson and I in particular have been in, we have been with our colleagues in the nonprofit community, in the church community, and there is mindsets when you're dealing with community-based organizations, you know, whether they're churches, whether they're other nonprofits, that someone for whatever reason feels that she or he must be in the driver's seat and take control. And Dr. Henderson and I have been in instances where, without our voices even being respected or heard, folks have just said, colleagues have just said, y'all need to come on into what we're doing. And not even respecting the fact that that might not even be part of our mission or our vision. Not even wanting to hear where we are, what we have to say, or challenges. You know, now let me tell you something. It don't mean that that can't work. My grandfather told me a story about how when he was a young man, still in East Texas, and he said he ran across this young lady, and you know, they had a little chemistry, and he said before they even went out on a date or anything, the young lady said, listen, you gonna get a job, and we gonna get together, and you gonna be my husband. And he said, and I listen to your grandmama every step of the way. That's just, so I'm not saying it can't never work out like that, but generally somebody telling you what you gonna do and you need to come over, as opposed to saying, you know, hey, how can we work together? Usually that don't work out too well. That usually don't work out too well. That worked out okay for my grandmama and my granddad, you know, and partly because he learned just to listen to whatever my grandmama said was gonna be law, okay? But in most cases, you know, if somebody just says, oh, Trevor, you need to come on in, you need to do this, you need to do that. Well, at some point, you know, you would hope that they would respect you enough to say, hey, so what's on your mind? What do you think? And so I think that organizations have to have that mentality. We can't just assume that people are going to get in line because we have a vision, especially if it's not something that we can share in. So I want to hear your thoughts about ways that we can collaborate that begin to uplift and honor.
Wow, that's a hard one because you don't see a lot of examples like that in our community, in our nation.
Yeah. I think another like complicating factor is that it's hard to know motive or work, right? Like we might say that we're doing good work, but where does that come from? And a lot of it comes from a place of charity, especially when it's coming from outside your own community and people just feel like they're doing the right thing. So like when you were talking about the organization that came into had no Black or brown leadership, talking about this is how we're gonna pull Black and brown kids in, like like that, like that's broken already. Like that does not work. And an organization like that will always be in competition, right? Like you can't collaborate with that organization because it's not genuine. Like it just I don't have the words for it, but it's just like it's not part of the community. So how can you weave it into community?
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, please go ahead. I want to follow up on you on that one.
No, that was it. Cause I see those things as like, that's one problem, you know, like, so if you tease part of that away, it's like, what does the rest of the collaboration look like?
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at the body politic that we're dealing with today, that is active in governing our lives, what we see is a fundamental failure to communicate in a world where both can agree on truth and reality. What is truth and what is reality? And if we can't start as a people, as organizations or whatever it is we're calling ourselves, coming together around some fundamental truths that we all say we accept as being that. And the other piece, and I hate to use the term, but I'm going to have to get the point across. We have to determine who the enemy is so that we don't end up shooting at one another, trying to destroy that which is out to destroy us. And we need to accurately identify it and be willing to recognize, as you were just saying, that's why I'm agreeing with Trevor. I don't understand how it is that a person can rob your house. And this is the person that you go to negotiate with about, should I negotiate, should I investigate how this went down, this robbery in my house? I need to get your approval of the terms of engagement of how we're going to do the investigation, and expect you to come out with some credible conclusions about what has just happened. And we seem to always need to get the permission of our enemies to do anything that we need to do that is substantial, and I don't understand that. So that's a part of it for me, Trevor. And who does not have a right to be at the table to discuss this with us? Because there are some voices that mean us no good. They told us, and I don't need for them to tell me twice before I believe them.
Well, you know, my response to what that group did that was going to come into town and save our children is that's that missionary or plantation mentality.
That's right.
Coming to the fore. And what we have to be aware of is when we hear it and see it, I think it was Maya Angelou, when somebody tells you who they are, believe who they are.
Yeah.
And don't try to like, oh, they really didn't mean that. They did mean that. I'm going to just show an example of what Pastor Mike and I have done recently, and it's not the first time, is I know what his program is about. I know what his goal is about. I know what his vision is. He knows what my project is about. I talked about it so many times. Everybody should see me coming and go, oh, Santa Fe right away, blah, blah, blah. My thing is that a few weeks ago, I shared with Pastor Mike, I was looking for students for our project. He heard me. He knows what my project is. And I got 2 awesome students. I got 2 awesome students to participate in our project. And I thank you for that. In return, this just has always gone back and forth between us.
Yeah.
We had a garden day.
That's right.
Said what you needed, and we showed up. That's sure putting action to what your motivations are and what you're all about. But he knows what our project is about. And sometimes you are gonna encounter situations where someone's gonna say, well, yeah, you need to drop that because I got a better plan. Their plan may not reflect what your community and what your objectives are. And I always believe you can't really go wrong if you are doing something that the voices in the community says. So it's always bottom up instead of top down. And if I can go with a groundswell of people who are behind me, I can say I'm speaking for I'm not putting words, I'm just telling you what our community wants. Because I don't ever want to say that the community said, I just want you to know what the community wants. And there's a distinction. There's a serious distinction. And we just need to really hear what somebody says. And then when we hear what they're saying, as Pastor Mike did with his congregation, he went somewhere where somebody heard him and gave him that support that he needed. You don't have time to hate.
No.
That's what the mother said who lost her son when I was 12 years old. So I don't have time to hate. I got to take care of business. My community needs me. And what we have to do is go, I support you, but we're not on the same path right now. I'm diverging this way, you're going that way, because we can't let it stop us.
And Ms. Corinne, that's the thing, that we have to be willing, because part of, we want to be accepted by everybody. And the tough medicine is that when you're going to do this work, you're not going to be accepted by everybody. Not everybody's going to get in line with the vision, that you have, that and I think she gives a great example. We found ways, to support, each other's vision, not because of Mike and Miss Corinne, but because of the community. And I think it's also important that in this space, I'm looking right now, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, in a very short time, we've started to create another community. I mean, think about this. Think about this. Cahill and Miss Corinne, in their relationship with Santa Fe right away and other parts of the city and other gardeners and CFFJ in particular, and the relationship that we've built, Abby and Trevor, and then I'm looking, with Nashoni, as she's come in and she's already got in community with you, right? Dr. Henderson, who has been a great friend to this. And then I'm looking on here and I see former councilwoman Cheryl Kirkwood Davila, who was one of the catalysts with us being able to fund our Voices Against Violence program. And if it really wasn't for her, and I'm saying it's not because she's on the call, but it's just true, that for the sake of her community and the sake of truth and truth telling, Cheryl was willing to whisk her own seat on the council, because her seat on the council wasn't as important to her as her telling the truth. And so when you're building community, there's a woman out of Chicago, her name is Dr. Iva Carruthers. And about 10 years ago, Trevor, I think I shared this with you. She was at Allen Temple, and she was doing a workshop, about Black ownership and possession and all these monetary economic terms. And you had like a lot of academics and a lot of professional people in there, and a lot of stiff-necked folk from the university and church folk, and they in there. And the sister said something, and they was with her until she got to this part. She said, but for the community to thrive, for the community to grow, it may mean some of us is going to have to be willing to give up some of what we have. You can hear a pin drop in the room. And you know how we get as professional folks. Yeah, I know we ain't in church, but I'm gonna say amen to myself right now. We as professional folk, and upper middle class folks sometimes, who that woman thinks she is telling us what we gonna have to give up. But unfortunately, I think about Frederick Douglass when he says that without no struggle there is no progress, and so there's some things we're gonna have to be willing to struggle with, organizationally, individually, and communally, in terms of how we collaborate and how we affirm one another. For me and Dr. Henderson in particular, for us, when we see Abby and Trevor and the Nashoni's coming, it's like, you know what? I'm not stupid. I'm 15 years in, as a pastor, and about 30 years into this work in the community. I know I'm on the backside of the mountain. It's like, and I ain't ashamed. I ain't ashamed to say it or admit it. And when I see women like this that are saying that, man, I I'm not ready to pick up the torch. I got the torch. Hey, for me, it's all good. And so what do we do to support you all in the moment? What do we do to support you all in the moment? When I think about Corinne and Cahill, I'm not trying to embarrass you, but when I think about Corinne said to me deliberately, she said, I need a young Latinx or African American woman and a young Latinx African American male that I can help to build leadership through. She said that. And when she got you, the first thing she said to me, she said, Michael, I got somebody that's fantastic. And so I think if we're not willing to say those things and not just say them, but support them, how can we talk about, because if it's just all about who gonna get the grant, who gonna get this and who gonna get that, grants will come and go. Grants will come and go. But the lifeblood of building community really is through the efforts and the commitment that you all have. And while I talk about Berkeley and Oakland and the East Bay, but wherever you are, that is the spirit that you have to engender, wherever you are. So that's just me. Cheryl, I don't know if you got some wisdom insights about, we're talking about how we can collaborate and not compete against one another.
Wow, thank you. And I'm so happy to be here and see all your beautiful faces. And yeah, I think especially now with the COVID economic recovery that we're all facing, we have to be united because one person's struggle is all of our struggles. That's from here to Palestine. And there's so many things. Like I just got an email that I was supposed to be in the TOPA meeting right now, but I guess the mayor's gutting that. So who knows what's happening there, but it's not a good thing. But we can't let these things happen. There's so much money coming from all different sources to prevent change and to like falsify the truth. So we all have to be cognizant of that. And that's what got me out of office, actually, I feel too. All the lies and big money that's put in to change the outcomes for, marginalized folks. So we just have to stand united and be in solidarity, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you. So we got about 4 minutes left. I want to turn it back over to Trevor and Abby to give us some final thoughts and insights, because you are the ones who really have been the catalyst in putting this together. The one housekeeping thing I will tell you, we will be sending out an email contacting folks for our next session, which will be sometime in the first week of July after Independence Day. But it'll be sometime in the first week of July. So we will make sure that you'll get that. And also, Michael, again, I know most of you are experienced gardeners, but Michael, if you want to put that PDF in the chat about starting a spring or summer garden, if you just want to put it out and people want to share it with their folks, that's good. But Trevor, Abby, I'm going to let you have some final thoughts.
I think Cheryl wanted to make an announcement first.
Go ahead, please. Please.
Oh, yeah. So, and this is for either on June 12th or in the future, but I've set up in honor of Consider the Homeless's founder, Barbara Brust, who passed away a bit ago. Her birthday is June 11th, and on June 12th, I'm gonna have a free day at the dentist for our unhoused community. And so One dentist in Oakland is gonna see 20 people, and my dentist in Berkeley is gonna see 5. But she's also willing to open up her office on a Monday for folks that need that type of assistance. And so I just thought I'd offer that up, and like, Reverend, if you could like tell I know you feed the homeless. So if you have folks and you can give me a list of folks, like maybe we can set up some times on a Monday for them to go see this dentist in Berkeley, who's a Black woman. She's right there on Telegraph, right across from Ashby. She's amazing. And then this other guy is in Oakland on 35th and MacArthur. And he actually does this for free every year in Kenya. So he's gonna do this on June 12th. So I just wanted to make that announcement. Thank you.
I'll spread the word. Spread the word. I will also, let me give you one more announcement before they go. And you know, this is open to everybody because most of y'all have some kind of connection to Berkeley, either as students or council members. And sure, I really need you to be on this. On the 25th, the Reimagining Public Safety, this led by David Mohammed and Natural Criminal Justice Reform Institute. I'll be helping to facilitate a meeting around reimagining policing and public safety. Again, when Cheryl was on the council, she was the major voice in this, and they really tried to kind of dismantle what she put forth and change it around. And there is a task force, but the task force has even pushed back on really gaining a lot of input from our community. And so, Michael, if you have that email that you can put in the chat that they can sign up, all of the issues that you already know.
I'm pulling it up.
Well, I checked with the Bright Star Research Group, who is really doing the survey. They have slots for 50 people, and as of yesterday, the meeting is at 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, the 25th. They only had about 24, 25 signups, so that means they still probably have about 25 slots. It'd be great if any of you all who are interested could get on there. They will give you a small $50 gift card for your time to participate. But the reality is we want to have 50 people. And again, you don't have to live in Berkeley. You just need to have a connection to Berkeley. What does that mean is if you are a student, you know, at one of the public high schools or at UC Berkeley, if you are, you know, part of a Berkeley organization, Santa Fe Right Away, CFFJ, if you work in Berkeley, if you worship in Berkeley, whatever, if you have any connection, there is, and Cheryl can speak to this more than anybody, yeah, there may be a change at the top of the police department, but the reality is there is still some insidious practices that are going in, and there's still some things that really need to be changed about how we think about public safety, reimagining the police, mental health, and all the things with it. So if you could go on and sign up, it's only gonna take you 2 or 3 minutes to do it, but we wanna get as close to 50 people in that space as we can.
Can I just say also to support the specialized care unit, which is instead of the cops, which is you know, ongoing events, and I can let you know, Reverend Smith, about that. Every Wednesday, I think at noon, they're gonna make noise out in front of 2180. So bring your pots and pans next Wednesday so that you bring attention to Care Not Cops at noon.
Thanks, Cheryl. Trevor, Abby, why don't y'all give us some final thoughts and take us out of here?
I was hoping that everyone would be able to like share their own final thoughts with a quick checkout. I'll pop it in the chat too. But I had two questions. Actually, Abby and I had two questions. One is, would you be interested in a social platform where we can connect away from this space in between meetings, where we can like share resources and discuss first? So that's like a yes or no. If that's accessible to you, we would make that as accessible as possible. You're all on Zoom, so I'm pretty sure you have access to the internet. And two, for an actual checkout question, what's a morsel or thought, an idea, something that you're taking away from today's discussion? And we can just popcorn.
One thing I'm taking away, I don't know nothing about gardening, so I need to get educated and get one started.
Popcorn. Yes, definitely to that social platform, Traver. That sounds awesome. And second, my thing I'm taking most away, I really resonated with what you said, and just the general theme of acknowledging and addressing trauma, and also how we can combat, competition between one another is really centering healing in these types of conversations, because once you can relate, that's something we can all relate on, is needing to heal. So once we can connect on that, I feel like you can see each other on a level field, and you're not like, I'm trying to compete with you. We just need to work together. So that's really what I'm taking away.
Okay, so I guess I'll jump in. No, you don't need to show my face or anything. It's all good. This is just who I am. So I'm not gonna apologize. But I never see people as competition. I just see them as pursuing something that matters to them. If we come across and we interact, then I always want to just share what I have, and I look forward to someone sharing. It might be because of the way I was brought up. I don't think so, but I'm going to say perhaps yes. Because when I grew up, there was a sense of community. My family is a part of the early migration. So you know what it was like. It's like being foreigners in your own land, and in this case, your own country. And so you would reach out to community, and community was always there for each other. And so I just kind of carried that with me wherever I go. And I enjoy the community that I encounter when we have this meeting. And to me, without, we used to say this when I was working with students, sharing is caring, caring is sharing. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Thank you.
My takeaway is I actually sent a message to Traver right after she spoke. I was like, along with healing, we have to, I feel like I hear the colonizer so much in these discussions in the FFP, and I'm like, we gotta forgive, we have to forgive. We can't like let people just be born in, they were born into this space and we were born into this mentality and we adapted it. And we got to forgive ourselves and others, for that deficit, and just be there for the healing space. And I feel that that's probably central to what we're doing right here.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. For me, what's coming through from this meeting is just feeling my heart feel so open. There's so much grief in the world and so much to be upset about all the time. And I feel so grateful to have this space to be welcomed here and to get to share and learn from everybody. And I feel really hopeful being on this call and knowing that these relationships are going to keep growing. And yeah, my heart's feeling warm, and just so much gratitude for all the sharing and for this community that we're building together.
Poor, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, I'm just thinking, I know I came in a little later. So I'm just trying to like kind of piece together what has been said. And I think what I'm struck with in general by this meeting, other meetings, is just like, yeah, this need to have this community of like people that are networking and coming together, you know, for, you know, something greater than ourselves, and something that can be, you know, be a part of the future, and help the future. Yeah, I mean, I'm just feeling like life is so short that I don't want to waste my time being a part of the status quo and trying to fit in and trying to get my piece of that, you know. So like networking, not so much to like secure something for myself, but to empower a group of people, you know, that want to do something bigger than ourselves. So and I'm coming at it that way. And yeah, so thank you for this.
I'm glad to hear your voice, bro.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to hear your voice too.
Nas, you got any words for us?
Yes, I'm thinking. I just got to the farm, so I'm harvesting and listening and being on the land.
Nice.
I just value having space like this, even though it's virtual. I appreciate sharing space with you all and hearing your stories, and as you said, hearing perspectives. And as you said, sometimes we just need someone to say, bring the butt over here and join the Zoom or get in this conversation. You need to be a part of this space. So I also appreciate those in our lives that have, you know, done that for us and made opportunities aware, just like we were sharing. Let's see who, Cheryl was sharing, you know, there's some dentists out there doing some amazing work, and that's what I'm here for, to share opportunities and to provide things that I have access to, or I'm in abundance of, and make sure that there's a reciprocal relationship with the land. And yeah, so I'm grateful that Trevor invited me to the space, and I'm glad to meet you all. And I guess it'd be cool to have some sort of platform that we could use to connect with, but also that could just happen through gathering, through sharing food. I'm not a super religious person. I did go to a few churches, but it does feel good to be in this space and to have that sort of community. And I've always appreciated of different faith groups and them looking out for me and my family.
All good, my sister.
Thanks, Nas. I can go. I'm trying to figure out a way to be succinct because like all of my ideas are always like kind of nebulous. But I heard this like theme of like truth telling and then like finding ways to like share a common truth. Dr. Henderson mentioned it when he was talking about like fundamental failures to communicate and then like finding common ground in our fundamental truths. But that's really difficult work. So it's like, I guess I'm taking away just like a motivation to find ways for us to like tell these radical truths, to find them, even if they're like uncomfortable for us to speak them. And then to identify like the problems that arise in our truths and the ways that we can like problem solve around them while circumventing the current system and creating a new one. So yeah, truth telling.
Thanks, sis. So everybody's gone, I think, except for Dr. Henderson. So I'm just going to say this real quick. I think this was really good. We're going to continue. I concur with what Trevor and Abby said. Yeah, there needs to be a space. And I also concur with what Nashoni said about even if we can communally gather. I can't have y'all gather in my social hall at the church until I can get it disinfected and everybody is vaccinated and all that. But that will happen. Nas, you don't have to be a super religious person to gather. We are an inclusive community. And like I said, I don't care if you little faith, no faith, different faith. This is an opportunity for us to come together through the brotherhood and sisterhood of humanity with our full selves. And so, this is an opportunity. And so, hopefully while Michael is back here this summer, we can have that opportunity to kind of commune, and we'll make that space happen. And I've told Trevor and Abby this, if there are things that we need to make space available to groups like the Melanated Farmers and others. Again, I can't have us back because my church is officially closed. And there's some things, I was laughing with Dr. Henderson, that it's good that the church is closed because I ain't got to deal with folks' attitudes sometimes. But the reality is, when that happens, we will make those spaces available. Okay, so I want you to know, and I want you to know that you are welcome in your full selves of who you are, and whoever society tells you that you aren't, you're welcome in that space. So please, that's not me just saying that to Nas, but that's to everybody. I want y'all to know that. Dr. Henderson, this was part of a vision that you created a couple of years ago. And, I often tell folks when they say, oh man, you did this, I said, nah, Dr. Henderson wrote the book, I just read it.
No,
so I want you to have the final word and just let us get up out of here.
Yes. I remember Trevor and Abby, you guys in that generation when I was teaching at Virginia Commonwealth University. And oftentimes after class, some of my students say, you're an angry old black man. Because, I guess I come off the way I present it sometimes. It carries all the frustrations that I carry along with me from my experience. But I have to say that coming in community and space with you all gives me, in church, the Trinity, the great Trinity of our faith is, in Paul, he says that there are three things remain: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. And sometimes, Pastor Mike, I think I want to challenge that, because some days hope to me seems to be the greatest of these, because we all talk about love, and love gets thrown around and bantered around and stuff like that. But out of all the negativity that's going on, coming out of a conversation like this with you all today, it gives me hope. And hearing these young voices that I engage, I got hope. So I'm going to give up. I'm the angry old black man is retiring, or is retired. And I'm going to hold on to some hope that I see in the eyes of Trevor and Abby and Nazi, for what I did see that I hear in your voices, that I going to hold on to, and Cahill and the sister who I did not quite get her name, but I'm so pleased to come into community with her as well. And my prayers and blessings that God will be with you, and the Spirit will keep you till we meet again.
Thank you, Doc. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Please.
So hope comes out of what? Love. That's all I'm going to say. Hope comes out of love.
She preaching without a license now.
Okay. All right. That's all I have to say, love.
No, that's it. That's it.
All right, I'm trying.
You got it.
And in my love, I got confession. Kim was leaving to go to the doctor, and I promised her I wouldn't go eat those M&Ms that was in front of me.
Uh-oh.
So y'all don't tell her. I didn't eat the whole pack, but I did eat 5 of them. That was probably 5 but
Scary.
but
At
Put 'em
least
away from
you
you.
were honest
Put 'em where
about
you
it and you
can't see 'em.
confessed.
Okay.
Hey, and then if anybody has a dentist they want to ask
Yeah,
if
I
they
be
would be
there.
willing to offer their services out, please do and let me know, because I think, you know, we could spread this love a lot further if more people contributed their time.
absolutely, we'll definitely get on it. We will get on it. I hope y'all have a wonderful day. We'll be in touch about our next session. And I know that Trevor and Abby will be kind of following up about kind of having that separate social media site. That'll be fantastic. And I just appreciate your time. Love you all much. Have a wonderful day, wonderful weekend.
Love
We'll
you
see
too.
you soon.
Bye,
All right.
everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.